Hi, welcome back to my adoption journey, A Beautiful Mess. I'm Heidi Russo Allen, and it's been a minute since my last video, so I'm looking forward to this video and moving forward with my story. I believe I left off with choosing a family for Colin, and that was Rick and Teresa Kaepernick. And I chose them for many reasons, which I talked about in my last video. But I also wanted to add that another couple of reasons I also chose them as they were obviously very stable family. And they had requested a biracial boy, which at that time in 1987 didn't happen often. And then another reason is they had a family member, I'm not sure if it was Rick or Teresa's side of the family, had adopted a biracial boy. And so I thought that would be good for Colin growing up, that he would have someone to relate to who was like him, mixed race. So all those reasons I had decided on the Kaepernicks. So moving forward now, I'm about 9 months pregnant and had found a family, which I have to say was a relief in the sense that if I continued to choose moving forward with placing for adoption, I had this amazing family picked out. So that was settling, or it was at least a relief that if I couldn't do it, I had a family that could. So moving forward, I'm 9 months pregnant, still working. And my mom had asked at that time if I wanted her to be in the delivery room with me. And I chose not to. We had our differences during the pregnancy. She was not very supportive. My family was not supportive in the sense of, okay, this happened, what are we gonna do? It wasn't a joyous moment, occasion. It was more like a dilemma. And what are we gonna do? How are we gonna figure it out? So anyhow, 2 girls I worked with, I believe their names were Sue and Natalie, if I recall. It's been a long time. But one of them chose to be my birthing coach. She had a family, a daughter. And Natalie, the other girl, was there just supportive. I'm at 40 weeks, 41 weeks, 42 weeks, and Colin is not coming. So I was induced. I was 2 weeks late. I believe it was 2 weeks late. And induced, and 36 hours of laboring and Pitocin and all that stuff. So he was stubborn then, and after a long laboring and no epidural, and I think the nurses were trying to teach me a lesson at 19 because I didn't have a lot of drugs. So anyhow, after a lot of interventions, he arrives. And November 3rd, 1987, Colin is born. And so he's healthy. He's 8 pounds. I want to say 3 ounces. My son, Michael, was about the same weight. So 3 ounces, 1.5 ounces in there. Anyhow, 8 pounds. So he's healthy. And they took him right from the room after I had him, I believe. I don't believe I know I didn't hold him or anything right away. And so my mom and dad did come to visit me in the hospital after I had Colin. And then I was in my room in the hospital after Colin was born, and I asked, the nurse came in, I rang, the nurse came in, and I said, I want to see my son, like, how's he doing? And she's like, oh, honey, we know you're giving him up for adoption. You just relax and you just rest and you recover. And I panicked. I don't know what I thought or what I had seen, but I immediately said, I want him in here. I want him in my room. I felt like they were going to take him. I felt like he was going to be taken and put in foster care. And I just had this moment of panic. And she kind of looked at me. I'm like, he is coming home with me. I am not putting him in foster care. Because at that time, that's how things moved through the court system if you were placing for adoption. There was a waiting period between the time you gave birth and the time you could get into court. And in Milwaukee, it was 6 weeks. So I had decided I was going to take Colin home with me, take care of him for that period of time until we could get into court for the relinquishing of my rights. And I felt very strongly about that. Everyone, including Susie, my social worker with Lutheran Social Services, who was helping me along through this whole thing, she advised against it. She said, you're going to get attached. And I'm like, absolutely not. And I'm very headstrong. I was very headstrong then. I think hopefully I'm not as, well, I think I still am anyhow. But I was absolutely not. He is not going to go from me to a foster home to the Kaepernicks. I just felt very strongly that I think I'd done some reading at the time. I don't really recall a lot, but I knew that babies know their mom's heartbeat and their voice. And I do know that was a concern of mine. If he knew my voice and my heartbeat and then went somewhere else to another woman's voice and heartbeat and then to another woman's, like, I don't know, and I don't know that research was out then. Maybe it was, I don't know, but I just felt like I didn't want that to happen. I knew that for a fact. So I was bringing him home with me. I was going to care for him for those 6 weeks. And then I felt very strongly that I was going to be the one to put him in Teresa Kaepernick's arms. I felt very strongly about all those things. And back then, that's not how things were done. So it was a little bit of breaking the rules, if you will, their rules, but I was very clear that if this was going to happen, it was going to be my way. I wanted to do it my way, as much as I could do it my way. If it had been totally my way, it would have been an open adoption, but that wasn't an option back then. It was either a closed adoption, where you had no contact whatsoever once you placed, or semi-open, where the birth mom could receive letters and pictures and updates on how their child was doing, as long as the adoptive parents were willing to do that. And so Rick and Teresa were willing to do that. And so that was the condition of our adoption, I guess, when we were talking and how all that worked through social services. So anyhow, the nurse did bring Colin into my hospital room, and I don't know why I thought this, but I'm like, oh, did they switch him? Did they take him? Did they? I don't know, you hear all those stories, and I was young, and so I'm checking him over, making sure he's mine. And he stayed in my room from that moment on until I left the hospital. You know, they want to take him out to the, you know, nursery and all of that, and so you can get rest. And I was absolutely not, because of my situation of choosing to place, and, you know, the staff at the hospital knowing that, I just was worried or paranoid or whatever that they were going to take him. And so, yeah, he stayed in my room, and we left the hospital. And honestly, I don't remember a lot about leaving the hospital. I think I got a car seat for my car from the hospital. I know I had gotten an apartment by myself because of the roommates I had been with prior. Obviously, I'm now bringing a child into the world, so I needed to find a new place. So I had an apartment, just a 1-bedroom apartment, small and not a very nice part of town, if you will, not where, you know, the area of Milwaukee where I was familiar with, but it's what I could afford. Barely afford. And so left the hospital with Colin, went back, I'm guessing to the apartment I lived in. I'm not sure how I got a crib in the apartment, but I do remember I had a crib for him. I think somebody let me borrow it. I'm not sure if it was through, you know, if it was someone my mom knew or a friend of mine. I don't really recall. But I had a crib for him. The girls, Sue and Natalie, who I'd worked with, they had just thrown me a little baby shower. So I had some clothes for him, and diapers and formula, that kind of thing. So yeah, so there I am, 19 with a baby, and trying to do it on my own, and going to his doctor's appointments. And because it was such a long labor, Colin did end up with ear infection, and so you know, was on medication for that, ear drops and stuff for that for a little bit. But other than that, was a healthy baby, and he was beautiful. He had these big brown eyes. In my next video, I have the picture I took. I wanted pictures taken of him, so I had pictures taken of him when he was a baby. And so yeah, so then I'm off work for, I think I was off work for 8 weeks, maybe 6-8 weeks at the time. I don't really recall, but I had Colin during that time. And during that time, obviously, how can you not grow attached? How can you not fall in love with your own child? He was a good baby, and he was beautiful and perfect. And I spent time at my dad's home with his wife, and he had gotten this little wooden cradle. It was like from, I don't know, way back when, but it was solid wood. It was beautiful, and he and his wife had, packed it full of padding and these blankets, and had a spot for Colin to nap and sleep when I came to visit. And so I spent a lot of time, I have to say, with my dad and his wife Phyllis during that time. My dad, it was hard for my dad. He would hold Colin and, loved him. And then he would say, can you take him? Because he didn't want to get too attached because obviously, at that time I had chosen to place him for adoption. So it was hard. It was hard on a lot of people because we all just loved him. And, my stepmom, Phyllis, would hold him and feed him and loved him. Everybody loved on him. And I had visited, my mom a couple times with him. And I don't really remember our conversations about it, because I know I knew her position. I knew her stance on the choice she wanted me to make. And so another time I had gone to my aunt's home. She had invited me over, and it was, Colin, he's beautiful, but it was just very uncomfortable feeling because I knew their position. I knew they did not want me to keep Colin and raise him. I knew they had all made it very clear. And so, and for their own reasons, I didn't agree with them. But I was 19, and you think you know what's best for you at 18, 19. You think you're an adult, you think you're smart, you think you know, but you really haven't lived enough to really know the consequences of having a child at 18 and 19 and raising them. And as a single mom, I saw my mom raise 3 girls after my parents divorced, and it was hard on her, even with support. And so I wanted so much for Colin. I wanted him to have a mom and dad. I loved him dearly. And I felt, so connected. How can you not feel connected to your own child? I was so connected. But I'm not a man. I'm not a dad. To try to bring that peace to his life, especially mixed race, that was all part of my thought process, I think, at that time. Initially moving into Colin's birth, and then right after Colin's birth. And then, you're caring for Colin, and, I'm up with him at night and feeding him and caring for him and loving him and all of that. And yet in the back of my mind is also the Kaepernicks and what they've been through and losing 2 children of their own, and, you know, a failed adoption they're going through. And did all of that weigh on my mind and my heart? Yeah, it did. And I didn't know it at the time because I wasn't a nurse at the time, or even knew that nursing was in my future. But clearly, like, I wanted to fix things. I wanted to make things okay. You know, I don't want to disappoint. And I wanted the world for Colin. And so all of these things are in the back of my mind. And can I say, you know, that what the Kaepernicks had been through, if I didn't follow through with my choice, did that weigh on me and in some ways make me feel guilty? Yeah, it did. There was a lot that I think I thought about. And at the same time, I'm in love with my son. I'm in love with my baby. And during those, you know, it was 6 weeks, and then we found out in another county we could get into court to relinquish my rights a week earlier. And did I want to do that? And that was very anxiety provoking for me, because that's 1 week less I have with my son if I continue to move forward. And yet that's 1 week less that I don't even know if you can say 1 week less of being attached to him, because you're already attached. I mean, you're attached from the moment you have them, you know? So, I agreed to the 5 weeks, 1 week earlier, in another county. It happened to be the county where my dad lived. And so every moment I had with Colin was precious to me. And as time went on, I did change my mind. I did change my mind and decide that I was going to parent him. I didn't know how. I didn't know how I was going to do it. I really was barely supporting myself. I didn't know how I was going to feed him, clothe him. And I know one thing that's always stuck with me that I thought about is, what if he wanted a new pair of shoes? And I couldn't buy them. Like, and I know that seems so trivial and so dumb or whatever, but that's what I thought about. Like, what if I mean, I didn't grow up having everything I wanted. I had to work for some things too. But if I needed something somehow, like if, you know, I needed basketball shoes to play basketball, or volleyball shoes, somehow I had them. And what if I couldn't provide that for him? What if I couldn't? And kids are mean, let's just be honest. Doesn't matter when you grow up, kids are mean. If you don't have, you know, nice clothes, or, you know, their clothes have holes, whatever, kids can be cruel. And so all of those things factored into my decision making and my thought process, but I'm not even sure how many weeks old Colin was, how many weeks after I'd given birth to him. You know, 2 weeks, 2.5 weeks, but I changed my mind. And I was going to keep him. And how I was going to tell Susie and my family and everyone else, I don't know. I hadn't figured that out, but I loved him, and I was in love with him, and he is beautiful and perfect, and he was my son. And so I changed my mind. So I'm going to stop there for now. My next video will talk about what happened next that was significant enough that I changed my mind back to placing Colin for adoption. So thank you for watching. Subscribe to my YouTube channel, please, and share this with anyone else struggling with a pregnancy or a decision, or not sure what they want to do, and hopefully my story can help them with their decision. All right, thanks for watching. Take care.